If one night you step into an elevator that takes you beyond the real world, what would you do? A week has passed since that strange night, but every time I close my eyes, the image of that moment replays in my mind. My name is James, an employee at an office company in a 6-story building. Right now, I'm on leave. Not for rest, but because I still can't process what happened last week. Let me start from the beginning. There was always something odd about the elevator in that building. Every time it reached the 6th floor, it would pause for a few seconds longer than usual. The doors would open, but no one ever got in or out. At first, I thought it was just a technical glitch. But when I noticed that the elevator's weight sensor showed someone entering or exiting, I couldn't ignore it anymore. Curiosity got the better of me, so I installed a small camera in the corner of the elevator ceiling. The next day after work, I reviewed the footage. What I saw left me frozen in place. At the 6th floor, the elevator doors opened, but there was no one there. Yet the weight sensor showed a change, as if someone had stepped inside. My heart pounded. Was this a system error? Or was it something more? I shared the footage with my colleague, Mike. He laughed at first, telling me I was overthinking things, but when he saw the video, his face turned pale. He agreed that we needed to investigate further. We dug into the company's old archives and found something shocking. 20 years ago, an employee named Richard had gone missing. According to the reports, he was trapped in that very same elevator on a stormy night, but after that, there was no record of him ever being found. What was even stranger was that there was no record of his body being removed from the building. A few nights later, I decided to investigate on my own. Mike was against it, but my curiosity wouldn't let me back down. That night, when I returned to the building, everything was dark. A heavy silence filled the air. My footsteps echoed on the worn-out floor. I took a deep breath and stepped into the elevator. My fingers were ice cold as I pressed the button for the 6th floor. The elevator started moving smoothly, but when it reached the 6th floor, the lights flickered. The pause was longer than ever. The doors slid open, but I saw nothing. Still, the weight sensor showed that something had entered. My heartbeat raced. Suddenly, I heard a faint sound behind me, like someone breathing. But when I turned around, the elevator was empty. Terrified, I looked back at the open doors. Suddenly, a faint shadow appeared in the elevator's reflective panel. I squinted my eyes, but there was no one there, or at least I thought there wasn't. Out of nowhere, and the elevator started plummeting downward at full speed. I hit the emergency stop button, but nothing happened. The free fall came to an abrupt stop, and then, instead of going back down, the elevator started ascending, higher than the 6th floor, as if the building extended beyond what was physically there. Then the elevator trembled violently, and the lights went out. In that pitch-black darkness, I heard the breathing again, closer this time. I could barely move. Suddenly, something cold brushed against my fingers. In that moment, I screamed, and at that exact second, the elevator stopped. When the doors opened, I collapsed onto the floor. The building was still dark, and an eerie silence filled the air. I ran. I didn't dare look back until I was out of the building. I haven't set foot in that place since that night. Mike says I should just forget about it, but how can I? If Richard never left that place, then he's still there. I'd really appreciate it if you could like the video before I continue the story. Let's get back to the story. The snow was up to her knees. The night was dark, and Maggie had no idea that tonight she would encounter something not quite human. Winter 1932, Montana. A remote rural area surrounded by dense forests and vast snowy plains. Heavy snow had been falling for 2 days straight, burying everything under a thick white blanket. Margaret Maggie Harper, a 35-year-old widow, sat by the small window of her wooden cabin, staring into the cold, dark night. The silence was only broken by the occasional howl of the wind. She had 2 children, but for a better life, she had sent them to live with her sister in town. She stayed behind in the old cabin, working every day on a cattle farm miles away. The day before, the farm owner had announced that their workplace was changing, and they would be moving to a new location. Rosa Smith, one of her co-workers, had told her, "I will come by at 5 a.m. to pick you up." The clock on the wooden wall ticked quietly. Then it stopped for a moment, before letting out a soft click. The hands settled precisely at 5 a.m. At that exact moment, there was a knock on the door. Maggie wrapped her shawl tightly around her shoulders, slipped on her heavy winter boots, and opened the door. Rose was standing outside. In the dim pre-dawn darkness, illuminated only by the weak glow of the moon reflecting off the snow, she looked different. The cold air turned their breaths into mist.
"Let's go, don't be late."
Her voice was shorter, rougher than usual. Maggie nodded without question, closed the door behind her, and followed. The snow crunched beneath their boots, and apart from their footsteps, the world was eerie silent. As they walked, Maggie instinctively stepped into Rose's footprints to make walking easier. But after a few minutes, she noticed something that sent a chill down her spine. Rose's footprints were growing. At first, she thought it was a trick of the light. Maybe the angle of the moon made them appear larger, but as she kept watching, there was no doubt. The footprints were no longer the size of a woman's. They were getting bigger and deeper, as if Rose was heavier now, or something else was walking in her place. Maggie's stomach twisted. She looked up ahead. Rose was still walking, but something about her was different. Her steps had lengthened slightly, her shoulders had slumped. It was almost as if she were carrying something. A deep, instinctual fear gripped Maggie, an ancient, unexplainable kind of fear. Something in her gut whispered, "Turn back." But she didn't. She forced herself forward for a few more minutes until she couldn't ignore it anymore. She stopped.
Rose?
Rose stopped as well, but she didn't turn around. She just stood there, completely still. Maggie realized she couldn't even hear her breathing. "Rose, are you okay?" Silence. Then, in the eerie stillness of the snowy night, Rose took another step forward. But this time, she left no footprints. Maggie's breath caught in her throat. Something was terribly wrong. Her body reacted before her mind could. She turned on her heels and ran. The snow was thick, dragging at her feet, but she pushed forward with everything she had. The freezing air burned her lungs, her heart pounded in terror. What was that thing? Was it even Rose? She didn't stop until she reached her cabin. She shoved the door open, slammed it shut, and locked it. Panting, she pressed her back against the wooden wall, her mind racing. Seconds passed. Then, knock, knock. Maggie's body froze. Her breath hitched as she heard a voice from the other side. "Maggie!" It was Rose, the real Rose. Her voice was calm, confused. "Why are you taking so long? I've been waiting outside to go to work together." Maggie's hands trembled as she slowly unlocked the door and cracked it open. Rose stood there, the real Rose, normal, just as she had always been. A terrifying realization dawned on Maggie. If Rose is standing here, then who or what was I walking with just now? She turned her head toward the snowy path. Her own footprints were still visible. But the other ones, the ones that had been growing bigger, had disappeared. Maggie quickly told Rose everything. Rose stared at her for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she whispered, her voice serious and firm. "Good thing you came back. That wasn't a person at all. It was something else, something that wanted to take you with it.
If you want to hear more scary stories, make sure to subscribe so we can reach 1,000 subs soon and bring you more.